Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I have an excellent guest. Her name is Elaine Mickman from the suburbs of Philadelphia in Montgomery County, PA. She's an allied health college graduate, but her life career has been a full-time mom and domestic manager. She has been the mom to 5 children. After 21 years of marriage, she was blindsided when her ex-husband deserted the family without warning and filed for divorce about 4 months later. She found herself trapped in a sinister, draconian, and eroded court system where not one court order was based on fact or law, which accurately describes her book title. Now, she's an author of Courtgate, The Courts, Divorced from the Law. After 8.5 years of litigation, the court never divided the marital assets and only divided her family. All appeals, included those from orders that proved fraud, were denied. The court has exploited her and her family and stripped her of everything she has ever worked for. They've left her destitute to perish near homeless with minor children, then ordered away her constitutional rights to silence her and censor her case and cover up the indisputable scandal of which bureaucrats and officials used her case to defraud the federal government in violation of federal regulations, codes, the Title 40 contract, the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, and a litany of Pennsylvania and U.S. criminal statutes. The court canceled her out, just wanted to erase her. And we're going to let Elaine take the stage. Welcome, Elaine. How are
Hey,
you?
Marianne. Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for interviewing me.
How are you holding up?
Well, just, hanging in there, but it's been very, very difficult. Very difficult.
How difficult was it for you to write this book?
It wasn't very difficult, but it was time consuming. Definitely time consuming. Yes. But all of the matters in my case, they have been brewing for so long, and I have so many records that it was really about referring to my records and keeping track of all my complaints and so forth. And I just had to put it together in some sort of fashion that kind of made sense, because my case is over 18 years old by now. So it was a lot to put in there. It was more about narrowing it down into categories.
Mm-hmm. And this is what people have to understand, is some of these cases go on for almost 20 years with no resolution.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what happened. Well, I guess it was resolved for everybody else, but certainly not for me or my children. And there's the court system. There's no conscience. You're really not a person. You're just an account. You are a number. You are a billable account in reality. How much money they will make off of you and your family.
Mm-hmm. And that includes the child support and the Title 40 funding and those incentives. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, each time you go into court, you have to pay money to file. If you have an attorney, that's never ending bills. If you have forensic accountants, that's never ending bills. And in my particular case, after all those bills were generated, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, none of it was even used for determining my divorce settlement. None of it was used for calculating child support. What was the purpose? There was no purpose to it. And I could also say with my ex-husband, he generated bills that he testified were $5 million, and that was back in February of 2012. That was 9 years ago. He had accumulated $5 million in costs and so forth. And what was the purpose of it? If a judge was going to come along and make up their own marital asset figure, and it was prior to any of the proceedings occurring. The judge in our case, he made a determination based on the value, the business value of our companies prior to divorce. So, and he never included any income. There was no purpose to any of the litigation. That's you know, what it comes down to.
So that judge really didn't know his equity law.
He
didn't know
did
what
not. Well, he didn't follow none of the judges, as I said to you before. Not one law, not one fact was applied to my case. Not one law or fact. Nothing. It was all predetermined, and all they did was take us through a pathway that generated fees for the court system, the system including everyone involved, lawyers, experts, and so forth like that. And I will say, I do have to say, for myself, I didn't make this choice. I was drafted. I tried to get a settlement prior to any of this, in writing through lawyers, and it was all ignored. So I was drafted. I didn't file for this divorce. All I did was file for child support. And at the time, I had 4 minor children, so I think it was fair. And I was homemaker mom throughout the duration of the marriage. So that was pretty much fair. And my ex-husband was in full control of our companies, and I had no access to anything, even though I was half shareholder. I was half shareholder to our corporations, but he's the one who went into the office. He controlled the bank accounts, and I was stay-at-home mom and had no reason to believe that my ex-husband would have done any of this to me. And it's not just me, it's his children. That's what really stands out as well. There are often a lot of fathers who they may get divorced and have disputes with their spouse, but they care about their own children and want to make sure they're provided for. In my case, my ex-husband didn't have any of those qualities of a father, and he used his children for a period of time. He sent support in, and then when it looked like the coast was clear, like he was able to walk away free and clear, then that terminated. And at the end of it, he left our youngest child was without any support as a minor child in high school. And our youngest is special needs. He's in the spectrum. And he, you know, and there's no secret here. The child had a history. And ex-husband and the court cannot deny they knew, because they're the one who forced me by court order with the threat of jail to take my child to multiple experts and doctors for evaluations. And his first evaluation in the spectrum came from the court-ordered neurologist. So they cannot in any way claim they didn't know, and that's not of record. And the public school had a box full of records on my son because of, you know, the things that occur when you have a child in the spectrum, you know, in a normal public school setting. But he's a wonderful kid. He's, you know, an excellent student, and, you know, he's come a long, long way. But, you know, even the support that I received, the child support that I received from the time my younger children were 10 and 13, they were really cut off of child support at that point, because they effectively terminated the child support then. Because what happened was a judge wrote a court order, and it's really not valid, but the domestic relations was complicit. They entered a $550,000 credit for my ex-husband on this computer system on one day. And that I have that document in my book, by the way, as proof. And it was for money that my ex-husband never sent into the system, which is required. There's a multitude of laws requiring it under 45 CFR, a litany of them. It requires the payer, the support payer, to send the money into the system, and then it must be dispersed to the custodial parent, the residential guardian parent, whoever's taking care of the children. So that's required, not just to my ex-husband, by the state. The state is required to comply under Title 4D. The state is subject to penalty. And this is where I think when I put all these records at the end of it, when it was all said and done, well, what happens is in support matters, they're always modifiable. They're never really final. So at any given time, the support could be adjusted and corrected. So really, it's not until the end, when support's terminated, that you can prove that everything was never corrected, it's fraud and everything like that. And that's exactly what happened. So at that point, when my son's child support was completely cut off, they wouldn't give me any hearings. They wouldn't give me the emancipation proceeding, which is required by law. It's not an emancipation is when your child, 6 months before your child will graduate high school, they send out a form to everyone who gets support, child support. And you can ignore it, or if you dispute the child support being terminated, you check it off and you have to say why. Oh, does your child, have some sort of problem that they will not be able to be gainfully employed? It's not a matter if your child's turning 18 and they're lazy or they're not smart. It's can they be gainfully employed to be independent? And if your child cannot, maybe your child has, any kind of problem. They could have, I don't know. I don't even want to say, because today politically, all you have to do is make one remark and people are attacking. But anyway, and my child met that standard that you need to be able to have extended child support. And this is in Pennsylvania. They provide for extended child support. Child support, although in Pennsylvania, it continues until your child either turns 18 or graduates high school, whichever comes later. So they cut my child support off. He was a minor. He was attending public school as a special needs student, and I had timely responded and submitted, it's timestamped, the form for emancipation to be delayed. I did not get the hearing for the emancipation. I asked for reinstatement of my son's child support. When I say asked, I mean everything's in writing, filed on the court records and so forth. They refused. I tried to appeal it. They would not give me the fee waiver, which I needed. Then I refiled for a new child support order based on what the domestic relations director suggested I do. And then it started the whole child support all over again. And I had an initial conference. There was no child support order in place, and the hearing officer would not put one in place when they're required. That's what they're supposed to do. That's the standard procedure. Then I went to the next level, which is a support master. My ex-husband did not come with required proof of income. He came with his attorney. My case had been 16, 17 years old. I lost track now. At least 16 years old by then. He didn't know you have to bring proof of income for child support.
They all do this. They all do this.
Yeah, and they played stupid. They played dumb, like they don't know. He was with his lawyer. He's been a lawyer for 45 years or something, and that's what he specializes in. And then it had to end up being rescheduled again. Then the next time, my ex-husband doesn't show up, and nobody bats an eye at this. They act like, well. And so we finally show when we had a proceeding in May of 2019. I explained everything to that support master, and she said to me she was going to reconvene the hearing, and I had to bring her the updated reports for my son. These are with different agencies who had done evaluations on him. and I needed the updated school's IEP, his transition forms, where he was going to need extended child support based on all the reports. Okay, so when those reports were all completed in July of 2019, I contacted the master. She sent out a hearing in September of 2019 for a proceeding to occur January of 2020. And, they give you an order saying you have to submit all this stuff a certain date, which I did. When everybody took a look at all those reports, there was no wiggle room out. They knew my ex-husband had to pay the child support. Not only that, what I had since also uncovered was that the court was maintaining 2 different sets of income records for my ex-husband. Now, if you have a business and you have 2 sets of records, 2 things happen. One, you go to jail often for income tax evasion, and you have to pay the fine for it. Even when you pay the fine, that and you pay your back taxes or whatever, you go to prison. This court, they were sitting on it, knowingly sitting on 2 sets of records. So they have 1 set of records identifying from the last time I had a child support proceeding. I believe it was in 2016 and 17. It started in 16. And while my ex-husband they used 1 set of records to determine a child support order, which was him making, maybe, I don't know, a little over 100,000 a year, maybe. And the other set of records shows him making $4.5 million a year. Now, there's a huge discrepancy between, let's say, 150,000 a year and $4.5 million a year. And, child support, you often get somewhere maybe around 10% of the net income from the parents, the income disclosed. And that's an enormous difference for the child. It made a difference between support money to actually pay for expenses, food, clothing, medical care, and so forth, and housing, shelter, and then the other support order not paying very very little. So in any event, the court not only had denied me repetitively the proceedings we did have, they knew it. They were using false information. There had been, at that last proceeding we had back in 2016 and 17, they didn't even let me present my case. They said, the recording malfunctioned when it was my turn. It just happened to malfunction, so I didn't even get an opportunity to present the case. And basically, everything that has occurred in my case, it's the same play. It's predetermined, and then they just take it down the path to write up, the rationale for it. And when I end up presenting everything at the very end, the court system knew that they either had to correct everything, which was substantial. The child support was millions and millions of dollars, because my case began back in February 2003 for the child support.
Wow.
When it first began, I had 4 minor children, and then each, one of them emancipated. Then a year and a half later, another one emancipated. But even with the 2 minor children, the case had gone on from 2004 all the way up to 2019. It was a good 15 years maybe. And that child support adds up when you're talking about income of millions of dollars every year from support payer for their income. So they knew at the higher courts, they knew they could not even let this go through an appeal. They ran out of excuses, no more excuses. So what they did was they quashed my appeal. They quashed it, and they abuse this quash all the time. The appeals court, they don't want to they want to obstruct your appeal. They quash you, and they will make up an excuse. And quash is really for an order that's not final. When you have a final order, that's appealable. And I always filed everything timely, followed the procedures. I didn't make errors. By all these years, I knew what I had to do. And they quashed it, and they entered an order. And this is just May 27th of 2021, indicating that I can never file for child support, and that I can never file an appeal on the child support either. They didn't even review my appeal. They didn't even review the order and go through the appeal before the order. They wrote an opinion before they even reviewed it. They just said, stop, you can't pass go. And that's where there's a real problem, because child support is always modifiable. Well, certainly in Pennsylvania. And so they can't say, oh, you're a vexatious client or party or litigant. Even child custody, it's the same. Child custody is always modifiable. Of course, the difference with child custody is that once a child's 18, typically, I think custody is over by then anyway. Child support is always modifiable. They can be an adult child, and you can still go back. So what they did was stop me by a court order without even reviewing. As far as alimony was concerned, I had filed at one point to reinstate alimony for change of circumstance, and the law provides for that. When I was medically approved disabled, I had filed for that, and the judge rubber stamp denied it and dismissed it without a hearing, and just said, you didn't get alimony in your divorce order, so that's the end of it, and you didn't win your divorce appeal. She completely ignored the fact that the law says you can come back for change of circumstance. They're cherry picking and selecting pieces they want without considering the law that's applicable. As far as the divorce, I got zero. Not one penny. My marriage at the time of the divorce order that was entered, it was nearly a 30-year marriage, 5 children. I was the stay-at-home mom for all throughout the duration of the marriage, and that wasn't because I was lazy. I did more work than any person going into a single job. At one point, I did apply and was called in to get for a job, for employment, and my ex-husband didn't want me to, and then we decided, since we have so many children, it's best, it was more efficient, effective for me to just be the stay-at-home mom until our kids were all either grown or until the youngest was significantly older. But and the way the judge gave me zero was, we went through a divorce trial. It concluded April 2010. There was nothing the judge could come up with to deny me a divorce settlement, so they had to create something. They had to create a reason, an excuse to discredit me or make me the bad person, even though being a bad person, discredit them, has nothing to do with divorce settlement. There's 11 factors in Pennsylvania for calculating or determining a divorce, how you settle it. And, I think most people would agree 50-50 would be fair, for a long marriage. Well, what the judge did was delay. He didn't enter an order for about 15 months or 16 months. And a few months after the divorce trial concluded, all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, I get called by an attorney I had telling me to be in court in a week. And the lawyer said he didn't know why. And this was a lawyer who was like in the Philadelphia Magazine frequently with like about 9 other lawyers. They're supposed to be like the top 10 lawyers in our state or area, I would say. And he doesn't know why. Well, that was hard to believe. And I was out of town. I was in California because my children had gone to a camp out there, and I'm told to be in a court 8 o'clock in the morning before the court even opens. And I knew there was something suspicious there. And I had a few people come just as observers. One person was kind of like an advocate who came with me, mostly because I guess of my son, when we had to be going to different experts or places like that. There was all sorts of stuff that had been happening, and I wanted somebody with me. So an advocate, sometimes my brother, different people. And then I had another couple, and they were seniors, but they were highly educated people, and they had heard what had been going on in my case for 6-7 years. So they knew there was something up. And when I went to this proceeding, the judge just begins reading an order where he transfers the legal custody of my children to a law firm, to a divorce lawyer, not to my ex-husband, and it's for profit. So, and they would have full control of my children. I raised my children. They live with me, but I wasn't allowed to take them to a doctor, a dentist. They sent letters to the guardian ad litem and this legal custodian, sent letters to 3 different surrounding police stations not to ever show up at my house for anything. Like, they knew I was a domestic violence victim. And they marched into the schools, the public schools, multiple times, conducting private custody litigation stuff in the schools, directing the schools what to do. And that really became, they hit their ceiling when like the school principal had taken me into a room one time, and she said, "This is coming from upstairs." In other words, she was getting directions from the superintendent, who was taking direction from the school board, which my ex-husband's attorney had his friend on the school board, and they were working the school system, forcing all kinds of things on my children. And where it really exploded, and the school principal had told me, "Your son doesn't need these services. Here's proof." She handed me a stack of papers. He said, "Here's your test results for him. He doesn't need these services. This is coming from upstairs." And she was just being nice to me and telling me the reality of it. And we had to put up with a whole lot of nonsense. My kids were harassed through the school. And then it really exploded when I found out through the special ed bureau, when I filed complaints there. There wasn't much they could do, but finally they investigated the one expert and found out it was a sex therapist. They were sending a sex therapist into the school for my 9-year-old child. My son was 9 years old, and they were billing when he was not licensed to be going into the school. And that's what really got the special ed bureau. This person was not even licensed. And I'm guessing that because he was going in there, I'm guessing that they were billing the government for these services while they were also billing it to me. They didn't bill it directly to me. What they did was my future divorce settlement would have to pay for this. Before they ran up all sorts of bills with experts that I wasn't permitted to know anything about or have any proof of. And then at the end, when a divorce order was entered, they said, "Here's your divorce settlement. You have to pay all these experts." That's kind of what they did. And they had it, the order was written where it was $125,000 down payment, basically, just to get this whole mess started. And then it ran over well over $1 million that they planned on charging me. But when the special ed bureau found out, he had to bail out. Another one of the experts was wearing two hats, got caught, and who I complained about, he had to bail out. And then another one who was seeing my daughter, that really escalated when one time I brought her and did a session, and it was at this woman's house. Her office was in the house, and everybody was in the office. I didn't know anything about this. My ex-husband, this legal custodian, and they were attacking my daughter verbally, I guess threatening her. And she was screaming for me. I was in the car. I didn't know. I wasn't even allowed to sit in the doctor's office in the waiting room. I was not even permitted. And I just found out. I got out of my car because it was very hot. It was expensive to keep the car on with air conditioner back at that time. I think gas was about $4.35 a gallon at that particular time. And I heard someone yelling, and I'm walking down this lady's driveway, and I hear my daughter screaming, "Mommy, help me." She was screaming at the top, "Mommy, help me." And when I heard that, I walked into that office and the door was locked from the waiting room to the office. And I'm knocking on that door. They wouldn't let me in. My daughter ran to the window and was banging, screaming. She ran through that lady's house and tried to break out of the front door. The lady yanked on her, injured my daughter's shoulder, pulled her arm, like tried to pull it out of her arm to keep her from escaping. But my daughter somehow escaped, and we left there. And I think that was sort of the end with her as well. These people just attacked my children. They made it clear that woman that was seeing my daughter had gotten this iPod from one of her friends, because my daughter would share this stuff. There was other kids she knew had gone through similar kind of stuff, and one of her friends did not go through this, but she got her an iPod and she recorded some of these things. That woman said, "This is about getting money out of mom." They were doing all of this to run up big bills and reverse it to me. And I was the homemaker mom without the income. So basically, it was a whole shakedown. They got a lot of money out of my ex-husband. He would be the winner. But I'm guessing he had to have paid out by now at least $6 million, maybe more, maybe $7 million in legal fees, with everything. But he got to be the winner and walk away with all the marital assets. And for me, I was the loser. All my legals must have added up to about $1 million, but I got nothing. So, there was no competing. For if you have a couple and one person pays $10,000 in legal fees and the other pays $0, the person paying $10,000 will be the winner. If, in my case, ex-husband paid millions and I couldn't pay that as much as he did, so he was the winner. This is what it comes down to, unless you happen to, maybe know somebody and you're like politically connected. But, my children's child support was effectively terminated when they were 10 and 13, because all the money they sent through the system from the time that, I guess it would be starting July 2011 until they terminated the support in December of 2018, that money was all owed back. So my children, and the first thing they did, because they put that $550,000 entry in there that was never sent in, my children paid $249,000 to their father by the court system garnishing their child support. So instead of them getting what they should have been receiving, they garnished it. So, and then there was still a balance of about $313,000. And I was sent an order back in, I think it was in February. I was sent an order telling me to show up in court in February of 2019 with a check for $313,000. I'm on disability.
Right. And, no wonder.
They knew I didn't have that money. And, the whole thing was ridiculous. And it's all a fraud.
Mhm.
They tampered, and I start, that's when I really started bringing this to the attention, because at this point, when they terminated the support order completely, now it's all finished and done,
Mhm.
and they can't readjust stuff unless they were going to reinstate it. They refused to reinstate the support. They wouldn't do the emancipation, and then they ended up sabotaging the new child support petition I filed. So the domestic relations director
Mhm.
had sealed my case for a number of years ago. And I thought that was odd, because normally if you have a question, you can call up the domestic relations and ask some different questions with your case. Nobody could ever access my case because it was sealed. So the director is the one that sealed that. Why was he doing that? Part of the services with domestic relations is to assist you. And if
Mhm.
they can't look at your record, they can't assist you other than telling you what hours of the day they're open.
Mhm.
So that was strange. And, in hindsight, he did it so nobody would be able to access. And, in case he had an employee, that was going to quit, they
Mhm.
don't want a whistleblower there talking about what's going on here. Um,
Mm.
so he retired in July of 2019 with his pension. And of course, I only recently found out now he's over in Lancaster County, as I call it, back in the saddle. That's a shame for Lancaster County now.
Yeah,
But,
right.
I'm serious, like I'm just saying, he knows what he did.
Mhm.
And he is what they call a public official. He's not elected, but he is sitting at the top rank of, he was the head of domestic relations. He's considered like an official. Other people who were involved with this child support, well, the governor, our governor,
Mhm.
a lot of people may not realize this. They'll think, what does he have to do with child support? The governor is in charge of the Title 4D contract that the state of Pennsylvania has with the federal government. So even though he's not directly involved with my case, he's in charge of everything that happens for all the counties. And I reported this stuff and had a conference with his chief of staff a number of years ago. And they were saying there's nothing they could do. Of course, there's something he could do, because the state was at risk for penalty for violating the Title 4D contract and these federal regulations. Did
Mm.
nothing. Now he is an elected official, and under laws, he should not have been able to even run for re-election based on that, just based on my case alone, violating and never correcting. Um, I mean, I can't even tell you how many laws are involved here. There's so many. There's a litany of a whole long list. Now it also implicates our legislators. I guess I can't tell you how many legislators. It's a long list. None of
Mhm.
them have any interest. And, but I will tell you, the court has stated that it is their interpretation that they're not to render any, well, under this case, Thompson, it says our interpretation must not render any provision extraneous or produce an absurd result. And
Mm.
that's according to Pennsylvania statutes, let's see, 1922, provision 1. And it says, it provides that the General Assembly, which is our legislator, does not intend a result that is absurd, impossible of execution, or unreasonable. I would think that having a court order that results where the children have to pay child support to their father or me on their behalf, I would say that that's pretty unreasonable and absurd and impossible, since I'm on disability. Nobody has corrected it. They're a complete violation of every law, every rule in the state. There's case law for each. What I will say is that every single element of my family court matter, whether it was child custody,
Mhm.
whether it was divorce, child support, or alimony, not one order, fact, nothing aligned. There was not one fact applied, and there was not one law applied, nor was there any case law applied. Oh, by the way, I got my child custody back
Mhm.
after about 15 months. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. I just wanted to follow up on that.
Okay.
So it was a cash grab. They came in, ran up a bill, got
Mhm.
125,000. That's what was garnished. That's not including my out-of-pocket expenses for having to deal with the lawyer, paying a lawyer probably about 125,000 or more for legal help with this, and all my other out-of-pocket expenses. And so there was no hearing to take away my legal custody, no petition, and there was nothing hearing to get my custody back. It was nothing more than a cash grab. It was a stick up. Give us the money. And with the threat of taking my children, the order included they were going to ship my children out of state to some residential center. They weren't going to hand my children to their father. The father's not even in the country. He left the country back in December 2002. My ex-husband consistently said he doesn't want visitation in custody. He said it on record in court. He said it in front of my attorney and his attorney.
Mhm.
He said right in the courthouse to me, in front of the attorneys, tell the children I'm dead. He did not want to see these children. He did not want to see them. So I just wanted to follow up on the custody. He
Mhm.
never wanted it. It was only about money. And
Money.
and that's why when you look on, I put the dollar sign on the courts, on the cover of my book, it says court gate, the courts, and there's a dollar sign. This is
Right.
nothing more than a business. We think it's a government branch that's going to be impartial, neutral. It's not. And when I say divorce from the law, a divorce is supposed to be dividing the assets. Well, it's actually the court that is divided from the law. They're
Right.
not ruling by law. And there is no liberty, there is no justice. And I say no liberty because they send a lot of people to jail for contempt when they can't afford to pay something,
Mhm.
like child support
Mhm.
or some other sanction. And in Pennsylvania, you can only be sent to jail for willful contempt, which is if you do have the income or ability to pay and you just choose not to. But that they're abusing that
Mhm.
that law as well. And there is no justice. There
No.
is justice when you have, from my marriage, I think there was about 21 million disclosed in my trial. So for me to get zero, that's there's there's no
No.
justification. The only way they were able to make that happen was, first of all, exclude all the marital assets, and all they used was the business value that the judge determined from at the time we were married and together. So we were not divorced for it was about 8.5 years that our trial occurred. I'm trying to think of the date. They did not, my ex-husband filed for the divorce in April of 2003. The
Mhm.
divorce order was entered in July of 2011.
Hmm.
So a number of years went by, and we were both shareholders to the
Mhm.
corporations. So those companies were making millions of dollars every year. But in any event, none of that income was included. It
And
was
that's
all,
extortion. It's all an
yes,
extortion scheme. Only in
absolutely.
Pennsylvania. I'm sure in
It's
other states as well, but
I think from my understanding, because I've spoken to people all over the country, people can't even fathom this. They can't believe the things that go on here. They hear about different things occurring all over, but here it is the worst. And then when I brought all of this to their attention, I think when you're disputing with your spouse,
mhm.
it's just a different level than when you bring and prove on paper corruption with the system.
Mhm.
If you can prove bribery with a judge, or certain bureaucrats and officials, I think that's what really provoked them to order away my rights.
Mm.
And what they're doing, I bring up in my book this Dred Scott. Dred Scott was a former
Mhm.
freed African slave, and it's nothing racial that I'm bringing up. I'm only pointing out that the courts had targeted a certain group at that point, and
Mhm.
they took away their ability to even, they said they didn't have the ability to even go into court. And now, so I'm calling it a rebranded. We're a different form. They're targeting certain individuals. If they want to keep you out of court and be the gatekeeper, they're just ordering away your rights, and they're tiering you. They're making you less than a person. I don't have the same rights as everybody else to even go file for child support for a child who's entitled by law to be receiving it. And you know what's also interesting? I had found this law, Pennsylvania 210 is code 63.1. And I hope anybody listening to this who's in Pennsylvania will hear this. 63.1, and it's under Pennsylvania, what is it, Title 210. It prohibits the judiciary from creating or diminishing rights. They don't have the right to take away your constitutional right. They're not allowed to diminish rights, and they just do it. They do anything. They are just not they will not comply with any of the laws. Title 42 in Pennsylvania, it's 4902. It specifically gives you access to the court to redress, and the judiciary is not compliant. Article 5 in our Constitution is a guaranteed right to appeal, but they're taking away people's right to appeal. And Article 5, 10C, that prohibits the judiciary from abridging your rights, but they do not care. They do what they want. So, I mean, this is, they're not ruling by law at all.
No, not at all.
And you know what? I wanted to touch on one more thing before we wrapped up. I just want to bring to the attention with the JCB, the Judicial Conduct Board.
Right.
When you have an issue with a judge, that's where everyone would say, well, file a complaint. First, everyone should know that the Judicial Conduct Board in Pennsylvania does not look at complaints that have anything to do with a matter that is able to be appealed. Even if you're getting denied at your appeal, they will not look at it. There are people who can't afford to appeal, who don't know how to. It doesn't matter. If it is appealable, they won't look at it. And, most people, that's what they're filing complaints, that the judges aren't doing things proper. Well, the Judicial Conduct Board is ineffective. It's dysfunctional. And the problem is they're not independent. It's run by sitting judges, privately practicing attorneys, and politically connected lay people. They never called me to be on the board.
Right.
And what I found, now in my case, my ex-husband's attorneys, like he had one attorney when I filed an appeal, his attorney was the chair of the Judicial Conduct Board. Now, how is it that I can file an appeal, a complaint against the judge when the judge entered an order for my ex-husband's attorney and he's the chair? That was only one. The chief of the JCB, the prior chief, I found out after my complaint was sitting for 4 years, over 4 years, I found out that the chief of the Judicial Conduct Board worked at the law firm that was helping my ex-husband embezzle the corporations from me. So in other words, my ex-husband had this law firm, and the law firm, by the way, represented me, my ex-husband, and our companies. Then comes along a divorce, and they're representing my ex-husband and the companies against me. And then, so that basically between 2004 and 2012, I guess by that, he finished off embezzling, fraudulently transferring the companies out of my name. I find out that the chief of the Judicial Conduct Board was at that law firm. Now, the chief was not my ex-husband's attorney, but he was at that law firm. Then he became chief of the JCB after that, after being a law firm partner at my ex-husband's law firm from 2012 up until when I gave out records to a legal newspaper proving that there was a conflict there. And this chief should never have been on my case. He should never have had anything to do with it. He wasn't impartial in any way. And they were all covering each other.
Mm-hmm.
So the chief was covering up. He was helping his old law firm. See, I filed fraud petitions against my ex-husband when I got all this record proof. And I didn't go searching for it. It came to me. We had the tax authorities, the IRS sending me stuff and contacting me, in different ways. They will contact you. They do skip tracing. Okay. And so meantime, the bottom line is that after I got all these records, I proved everything, and the Judicial Conduct Board chief ended up retiring suddenly. But you know what? 5 months later, he's working somewhere else now. So, the cycle continues. Listen, it's a circle. This is a circle of corruption, and somebody's going to have to convince me otherwise. Okay. Right. Somebody show me anybody. You show me one proof of any element in my case, and you can convince me, but there is nothing. So I really implore, really hope people will hear, if you think, well, I got all the records and the law's on my side, doesn't matter.
No,
it doesn't matter, because these courts are divorced from the law. The title of my book.
I'm so glad you wrote this book. I am so glad I interviewed you. How can people reach you with any questions?
I didn't put my contact or anything in the book because I wasn't sure how to handle that. I don't have some agent or anything like that. How about do you have a contact from Slam the Gavel?
Yeah, if they want to contact me through dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com with any questions for Elaine, then I can get in contact for people to get to you.
Sure.
How's that?
Sure, that would be great. You can call me, email me. If anyone wants to contact you regarding me, they could do it through you, and that would be great. I mean, I'm happy to give any information, proof, records, anything. At this point, I feel like I'm an open book at this point.
That's awesome. I think you're awesome. Don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again in the future with Elaine and other exciting guests. Thank you so much, Elaine.
Oh, thank you.